Hello everybody, this is LagSpike, and today I'm here to bring you some information and some interesting tidbits about a game that you, as a Fire Emblem player, might be interested in, called The 100 Line Last Defense Academy. 100 Line is a game that came out very recently at the time of recording. The most notable names in the production of this game are Kazutaka Kodaka, the creator of the Danganronpa series, and Kotaro Uchikoshi, the creator of the Zero Escape series. These both are extremely well-known and prolific visual novel creators, and they've come together to create what they've described as the most ambitious visual novel gameplay experience that they've ever made. I myself am both a Fire Emblem player and a visual novel reader, so as a result, this game is very important to me as a player. I wanted to go over today what I think would appeal and what I think this game is missing from the Fire Emblem player's perspective. The gameplay is very intuitive. You just move your units around and you attack as need be. You have your AP in the top left. Every single action you take requires some kind of AP for the most part. There are these strategic materials, which are one-time use items, like these fences that you can set up, which are not AP requirements. But if there's something that doesn't take AP, it'll say in the top left. That's basically the general gameplay. Every unit has up to 3 different attack/support skills that they can use, and it varies based on the unit, and what they do based on the unit is different. For example, our main character Takumi here, he's a general purpose combat unit that's pretty good at dealing some AoE damage, as you can see by his side slash, which is a 2 damage 1/5 area of effect attack, which is pretty good rate, all things considered. There's also characters like Tsubasa here. She is not great at dealing damage, but she has a ton of movement, and unlike every other unit in the game, when she takes an action, she doesn't get fatigued. Fatigue is this mechanic where, let's take Gaku here, and let's have him attack. He is now fatigued, as you can see, which means that for the next action, he can only move 1 tile. He can still attack like normal, but you can only move 1 tile when you're fatigued. You can use this defensive stance ability, which every single unit has, to heal the fatigue, but it does take another AP. Tsubasa's main advantage is that she has a ton of movement, and she does not get fatigued no matter what. That's her special ability. If you see over here, the special mechanic, it says she is immune to fatigue. There's also the voltage meter in the top. The voltage meter fills up as you fight, and it allows you to use special attacks that deal a ton of damage but stun your unit for a turn. It's a very intuitive way of playing gameplay, and I'm pretty sure anybody who tries to learn this game could understand in just a couple of hours. Number 2 advantage that I think this game really has is that the numbers are really small. If you notice, even the most bulky enemy on this map only has 10 HP. So, and most of the enemies, these little guys here, only have 1 HP. So keeping track of this is very easy. Any enemy that has 1 HP does not give you an AP when you defeat it. Any enemy that has more than 1 HP, like these 4 HP guys, or this 4 HP guy, give you plus 1 AP when you defeat them. You can see right here. You see my AP got refunded there. That's very simple to understand, and even the bosses only have HP in the double digits range. It's nothing more than that. It's pretty easy to do math. And I understand that Fire Emblem math is not really that hard all the time, and you're never going to have to worry about that when playing 100 Line. Another really cool way that this game works is that it handles death in a very interesting way. So in this game, units can die on map and due to story reasons. The only kind of death that sticks around is story deaths, because in the lore, the characters have what's called the Revive-O-Matic, which is a machine that, because of their special powers, allows them to be revived each wave if they die in the school bounds. So, I used an item to reduce Takemaru's HP here to 1, and then once you're at low HP and your HP is in the red, you can use these last resorts, which are the same abilities that you use once you get 100 voltage. Let's say I do it here. You got a cool little cinematic here. He does his attack. And then because I use the last resort version of this, he actually dies. And anytime a unit dies, you get 100% extra voltage, which you can use for a variety of different things. And the way that this game works is that, unlike in Fire Emblem, where let's say you have a deployment limit of 16 units, and you only have 3 units left alive, you're going to have a much less powerful player phase than you could have otherwise. But because 100 Line functions off of AP, even if you only have 1 unit left alive, you still have 4 actions that they can do, which is really useful. Another consequence of how death is handled in the 100 line is that because permanent deaths are only story related, you have a consistent set of around 15 characters that you learn how to use and you get to stick with. For example, if you learn how to use Darumi here pretty well, you're going to be able to take that information with you for the rest of the game. Whereas in Fire Emblem, that's not really going to be working out all the time, because there's sometimes, if Darumi is a bad unit, she might fall off and you might have to use other units. But for the most part, deployment is not an issue. All of your units get deployed every map whenever available, so you will be able to get used to the same set of units that you have from the beginning and develop them and learn how to use them, and it's a very skill-intensive game as a result. That's it for the pros. For the things that I'm not really sure about, there's a few things. Number one is the way that this game handles reinforcements. Reinforcements work in this game by spawning in, and they can't move the turn they spawn in. In Fire Emblem, we have what's called ambush spawns, which are units that spawn in and move and attack on the same turn. In the modern era, that's generally agreed to be pretty bad game design, and it's not really a fun way to make a game that's fun for new players to play. But 100 line doesn't quite have ambush spawns. The enemies can attack you as soon as they spawn in, however they are unable to move. I'm kind of torn on this, because the thing about 100 line is that typically, because they can't move, you're not really going to be having any units that die because of them, because there's not really too many things in this game that give you benefits for staying at low HP. There's benefits for being at low HP, but you either heal yourself when you're at low HP, or you heal yourself back up to high HP and you don't take advantage of that. There's nothing really, like in Fire Emblem, we have the skill called Vantage, which lets you attack first if you are at low HP. There's not too much like that in 100 line. So thankfully, you're usually going to be at high enough HP that if you're close to the reinforcement zone, you won't take enough damage to die. However, it is just kind of weird. It's kind of a half measure. I'm not really sure how to feel about it. Number 2, deployment order, deployment number, and deployment location is always fixed. I've been playing this game for about 30 hours, and I've gotten around 5 of the endings across 2 major routes. And the way that deployment works is that you don't get to choose your deployment. First of all, the units that you deploy are story-based. So, for example, we have these units here. They're taking part in a story battle against this enemy boss. And the rest of the units deployed are units that we have access to. And they are predetermined in this location. On your first run, Eito and Darumi are always going to be deployed on this side of this map at this time. So you don't get to choose your deployment, which is kind of a blessing and a curse, because if your best unit, Takumi, for me, my best unit is Takumi because he's the one that had 100% availability across all routes. If he's unable to get to where the boss is, like for example, if he spawns here and the boss spawns on the other side, then it's going to be kind of a pain in the ass to get him over there. It's going to take a lot of AP. But on the other hand, you get to deploy all your units every chapter, and usually the deployment is pretty sensible. They're not going to put a unit on a part of the map where they have literally nothing to do, so it's usually pretty fine. Finally is the concept of consumables. The consumables are really cool because they let you access strategies like the Desperation Potion allows you to use your last resort and give yourself 100 voltage, which you can use to do a bunch of things like give yourself extra AP even, or use your super. But they don't come back at the end of each wave. They come back at the end of each battle. And it's a little frustrating because it's not really... Maybe this is a skill issue, and I'm totally willing to admit that. But it's a little frustrating at times because you'll really want to use an item or a strategy that's really fun to use across multiple waves, but you kind of have to end up rationing it. And the way you play without the ability is not really harder, it's just kind of more boring. Finally, let's move on to the things that I think are genuinely bad about this game. First of all, right now, you notice, based on the button prompts on the screen, that I'm playing on keyboard. This game absolutely sucks to play on keyboard. If you are playing and buying the 100 line, I highly recommend that you play on controller. The main reason for this is choosing how your battle directions work. Let's say I want to move onto this tile right here with Takumi and attack to the right with the side slash. So this enemy, this enemy, this enemy, this enemy, and this enemy are going to attack. Now, if I just target this enemy, it's going to go attack straight on. If I go onto this tile and target this enemy, sometimes it moves back and forth. You have to move here, click OK, and then attack here. It's very annoying. You also can use buttons to change the direction you're attacking, but the buttons are I, J, K, and L, and considering that for the most part, I like using my mouse to move around on map, it's a little frustrating. Now, let's change this and move over to controller here. Once I'm on controller, you can see that the camera rotation, the ally selection, you can do it by D-pad, and in fact, unlike the keyboard and mouse where you have to use your scroll wheel and you can only go up and down, if there's 2 columns of characters, you can actually use your left and right D-pad to do that too. And also, because you have your right stick, I can just move here, face this way using my right stick, and then attack easily. This game is definitely built for controller, and it's a little frustrating because this game is actually made for PC. This game is not on Xbox or PlayStation right now. It's only on PC and Switch, and Kodaka has said that this game was made for PC. So it's a little frustrating that keyboard and mouse is not well supported. Thankfully, I think most people will have access to a controller that they can play with, and it's not unplayable on PC. In fact, the first 20 hours of this game, I played on keyboard and mouse controls, and it was mostly playable. Number 2 is that sometimes the enemy phases are long. Let's just end the turn and look at what happens here. There's no way to speed up the enemy phases that I know of. I'm pressing the start button, I'm pressing the circle button, which is what you use to speed up in story, and nothing's really speeding up how fast the enemy phase goes. And sometimes you just kind of have to deal with an annoyingly long enemy phase where you're not really doing anything interesting. Do you see that little fist icon next to the word condition under Takumi's health bar? Do you know what that does? I, right now, have not found any way to go in and check what this does. Now, I know what it does because I used an attack potion to give him an attack boost, so I know that he has +1 attack now, so he's doing 3 damage instead of 4. But it's really frustrating that there's a lot of buffs and debuffs in the game, and on the first time when you're learning about these, there's not really a more convenient way to look at what your buffs and debuffs do all the time. Thankfully, for something as simple as this, you see that there's that little pop-up box next to Takumi's name, which says attack up, and that is true, that is what this is doing. But sometimes they keyword these abilities, so it'll say something like stun, which you might know that you can't use your unit, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they can do stuff on enemy phase. Does it allow them to use their ability to counterattack if you activate this counter-strike ability? It's not always clear, and sometimes it just gives you the name of the effect that's applied to your unit and not exactly the ability. Another really frustrating thing sometimes this game has had happen to me is that this game has really inconsistent access to battle preparations. Battle preparations don't really happen in a pre-battle menu. What happens is that you need to get a batch of time that is designated as free time, and you need to use that to improve your units in battle. However, sometimes you just don't get access to that. For example, this route is the romance route. I was unlucky enough to stumble into this route for my first main route that I happened to select. And starting on day 24, all the way up until day 73 at the very least, I had absolutely zero access to preps. This means that I have just an abundance of BP, which is basically gold that you can use to upgrade your units. I have access to materials, but I can't use it. And when you go on your second playthrough, the enemies start to scale with you as well. So the enemies are getting a bit stronger, but I haven't really had a really good opportunity to help fix my units and make them stronger to compensate for that either. It's just kind of a frustrating thing to deal with sometimes. It's not going to come into play every single route, but some routes it is going to come into play. And admittedly, you can fix this pretty easily by just going over here to the time flow chart and then heading to a route that does actually let you do preps. Like, for example, I believe on one of these routes, yeah, right here, I have a free time block that I can use to do preps. I could travel there and then travel back. But at the end of the day, it's just a little annoying to not have access to your preps all the time. My final issue with the SRPG segment of 100 Line is that there's a lot of really small things that unfortunately just come from a lack of years and years of experience in the SRPG field on Kodaka's end. For example, enemies have varied ranges based on the type of enemy it is. For example, the bigger the enemy is, typically they have lower movement. So this guy has 3 movement, these guys have 4 movement. But the 4 HP guys typically also have 4 movement. There's also some of these ranged guys, if I can get over here. These guys also have 3 movement only, but they have a long range. But you can't really select... You can check their movement, but you can't really select their movement at the same time, like in a game, like a Fire Emblem game, a modern Fire Emblem game, and have them open at the same time as you move your units, so you can make sure you're moving your units outside of all enemy range. It's just a little frustrating to deal with. Sometimes you'll get objectives that say annihilate all enemies, aka for a Fire Emblem player, that's what we call route, which means that you have to defeat all enemies on the map. However, this will count enemies that join as part of reinforcements, and you don't know if there's reinforcements until the reinforcements show up. So you might expend a lot of resources and get a lot of your units using stuff that might stun them to kill all the enemies, because you think that the next wave will start and all your units will get unstunned and moved back to their starting positions when the next wave starts. However, you just end up killing all the enemies on this current wave of enemies, and there's a new wave of reinforcements that you haven't dealt with yet. And that can be pretty frustrating at times. Another thing that you might have noticed by now is that the scroll speed is really, really slow. Like, there's frequently times we have to go from this side of the map to the other side of the map, and you can remedy this by using the D-pad to switch between units, but it's not always easy to remember which units are on what side of the map, because they change depending on the chapter, and it's just kind of a pain. And there is an option, if you look into the menu here, if you go to the game, and you go here to the battle cursor speed. The cursor speed is actually at its max right now. It was originally, I believe, at this value, and it's at its max. But even then, the cursor speed is pretty slow, all things considered. Honestly, that's mainly the only complaints that I have for this game. I might be a little bit harsh on this game, but frankly, this game is a marvel for the visual novel genre. But this is purely coming at it from a Fire Emblem player's perspective. So if you think that this game is really good, don't worry. When I do the what 100 line is to a visual novel player video, there's going to be a whole lot of praise for this game. So just stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys next time.